All right, let's jump right in. So first off, my name is Jelani Thomas. I am the uh, marketing pro. I'm sorry, product marketing manager here at Flatiron School. Usually, I am focused mostly on data science, but for today, we're going to focus on product design. Um, I focus mostly on data science, and it's cool because that's personally my favorite subject. But a very, 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 very close second is product design. Find it super interesting, and I'm sure most of you do too. And that's the reason why you're here. So let's just jump right into it. Kind of a good place to start for those of you who may not know exactly what product design is, sort of the intersection of user experience and user interface. Um, and you know, the sorry, my screen is messing up too. Hold on, give me 1 second, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Sorry, it's a little glitchy on my end. So let me start over. So yeah, a good place to start is what is product design? It's the intersection of user experience and user interface. So what should users experience and how is that communicated to them? What content and actions should be available to a user on a screen, or and how will it be presented to them so it's intuitive and easy to use. So the goal of our course is to really help you build skills in UX, UI, and of course the soft skills and um, sort of like the overall presentation skills that that you need to develop to be able to present your work in the right way. Um, and really want to help with this, hopefully with this quick presentation, help you kind of understand what to expect in the course and also help you like contextualize the workshop as well. So let's move on to, uh, sorry, it's glitchy again. Why these skills, right? So product design is it's a growing industry, and it's always needed at every level of the business. So really UX UI is at the heart of every business because essentially every business has a product that they're looking to sell. So the needs of the market constantly change. We've also built relationships with hiring partners and industry brands to better understand what is exactly needed. We've conducted research on emerging technologies, tools, practices to design a course that is directed at the future rather than the past, which makes a lot of sense, of course. We work with educators and instructional designers to build a course that supports students along their path towards a new career. How many people in the chat are either interested in design and are looking to switch, or on really in the process of switching? How many people in the chat? Just wanting to switch, in the process of switching. Nice. Not sure. It's okay not to be sure. Curious. Yeah, cool. Starting the boot camp at the end of October. Nice. Okay, cool. So we've got a few people in the chat here that are interested in switching careers, and actually a few people that are actually designers too. It's pretty awesome. All right. So just a quick 5,000-foot view of the program. So there's 5 phases in the program. Starts with the building blocks of understanding the design, scaffolds towards like simulating the real world experience of a designer. As students practice, they'll be assessing their skills, independent labs, project work. As students work, they'll receive feedback daily from peers and of course instructors. There's a ton of practice presenting work and critiquing work. Feedback starts as directional, but becomes a lot more collaborative. And then it ramps up to you being more and more independent. Then this is a breakdown of the 5 phases. Starting with the first one, phase 1 is the UX process. So you define what the process is and how the steps are related. Introduction to tools, methodologies, best practices to use at each step. Students focus on conducting research, huge part of it. Synthesizing meaningful insights, creating deliverables, and then ultimately communicating findings to other team members and stakeholders. Phase 2 is similar in that it's about building the foundation of a design skill set. This skill set is used on user interface design. So all different types of interfaces as well. You learn the process of visual design as well as the tools used to create beautiful products. Learn a lot about color theory, which personally think is really interesting, especially because of Joshua's very neon background right now. It's super cool. Typography, iconography, I can never say this word, iconography, layouts, and much more. I definitely botched that word, but I hope most of you got that. Sorry, is it stalled? All right, you guys, all right, you see it. Phase 3 is our first studio. So studio is a simulation of an actual design brief, which is really cool. You can see some of those images right there. Students will own both a UX and UI project, putting the skills they learn to the test, which of course is necessary. We need to, be able to demonstrate that you've learned what you need to learn. Not only do students practice hard skills, but like I mentioned before, a lot of soft skills. We'll present and critique work with one another as well. Vocalize design choices to different audiences. That I think is one of the coolest parts, is that when you get critiqued on a particular design or different function of your design, you get the opportunity to sort of vocalize why you made the particular choice and why it was the right choice for this particular product. So I've sat in a bunch of product design presentations, and it's really interesting the back and forth when an instructor gives critique and then the student kind of goes back and explains like why they made the choice. So it's usually interesting to kind of hear the thought process. Phase 4 now is another studio, but much more intense. Students own one project from beginning to end. They own and practice their UX and UI skills on a single product, and students will be learning, ethics, huge, communication skills, big deal, and presentation strategies, another 3 very, very important qualities. And then the quality of your work will be at a professional level at this point. You are designers while you're in this course, and you don't have to graduate to become a designer. You're a designer when you're in this course. Phase 5 is where it kind of gets real. Students create and launch a portfolio showcasing their work. Can't get a job or any consulting gigs without a portfolio. So this is the vessel used to start your job search. This phase will essentially prepare you to enter the job market immediately. This course will challenge students to talk competently about their work and to communicate their strengths in UX and UI as you prepare to enter the job market. So, this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. Cool. So these next few slides, I won't go too deep into them, but these are just some of the titles that you can expect to have. So, those ambitious, exceptional students find themselves as product designers once you're done. Typically, there's people who are really good at both UX and UI processes, and they own all design decisions on a particular product as a product designer. These types of roles are probably more common at small companies and startups, but you just never know. UX designer, kind of self-explanatory, but UX designers own the beginning of any design initiative. The exact ask of a UX designer can be a little fluid, and it depends on the need of the project and the company. So they advocate for the end user and make sure that they get their problem solved. So you're super close to the end user. Not a super technologically demanding position, but you are seen as like the default problem solver. And of course, if you have a UX designer, there's definitely roles for a UI designer. So a student, this would typically be a student who excels in the user interface side of things. Most commonly thought of when you think of somebody in design, I think this is like the thing that maybe the general public would default to thinking about. Final steps before a product is released into the market. That's what you're really really owning as a UI designer. And you also ensure the usability of a product while accounting for many different variables like the interface itself, visual consistency with the brand, the product, the company, and of course, the many different type of users that'll interact with the product as well. And then there's a user researcher. It's another common title. Utilized most to conduct user research to understand like the needs of the user, any frustrations that the user is dealing with, goals. And research is usually leveraged to evaluate the existing product for its usability and its desirability. So essentially you help inform the design and the company direction with the product. Visual designers, these designers usually have really strong technical skills. These people are called on for creating like marketing assets, hi-fi animations, and sometimes like super complex interactive prototypes. So UI designers will define the visual direction and create the vision, and they usually are essentially ones that execute the vision. UI designers will define the visual direction and create the vision, while visual designers execute on that vision. And lastly, just want to say that there's a lot of titles. So there is not just those that I just mentioned. Those are just some of the more common ones. So yeah, it's not just a type of work, but design is utilized in pretty much every industry imaginable. So sky's the limit. And I will stop sharing now. And I will pass the mic to Joshua. Joshua, introduce yourself to the people.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before I do that, though, I want to flag, we've had a request that we turn on the closed captions. I can't do that. It doesn't let me do it, I think, because I'm not the webinar host, but you should be able to do that under accessibility. Thanks.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm very excited to come and talk to you about what designing future scenarios is all about. It sounds like we have a good mix of people that are brand new to design and that are just interested in kind of poking and seeing what product design is all about. And then we seem to have a range of people who are already experienced designers. So my hope for this part of the talk is that I hit that middle part where I'm able to explain enough about the role of design in the product process, while also sort of stimulating some thinking on the part of people who are already in roles that are related to design. So that might be software engineers, it might be product managers, project managers. So even if you are not a designer, but you know or work with designers, this is going to be really helpful information, okay? Awesome. Please do use the Q&A. I will try to keep an eye on any questions that are coming in and then answer them live. Since we are getting started a little late, I have made an executive decision that this is going to be a two-parter. webinar. So the first part, we're going to focus on what it means to collect data and information in order to create those future scenarios. Okay, so we're kind of looking at the first part of that tonight. And then in the second part that we're going to ask you to sign up for, we're going to actually get into constructing those different scenarios. And I'm going to show you how to turn all of that information into a compelling story that can be useful when you are ready to start coming up with innovative solutions and ideas with a team of people. All right, so everyone can see my slides here? All right, awesome. So we will kick off. All right. So if you are here tonight and you're seeing this quote from Mr. Tolkien and you're saying, another designer, giving quotes from Lord of the Rings, I am here to assure you that is absolutely the case. But this is a strategic quote, okay? This quote is actually going to set the tone for what we're talking about. And what we're talking about is this idea that given the state of technology and complexity in the world today, it's very, very difficult to predict where our projects and solutions are going to end up. All right. So tonight we're talking about this idea of discovery. Okay. And Tolkien writes in the introduction to one of the books where he says, I didn't know where I was going until I started moving. Right. The tale grew in the telling. All right. And so that's kind of the theme of what we're talking about when we are saying we want to develop future scenarios. So I want you to think about something for just a moment. I want you to think about the last time you made a goal and then had to abandon ship. Now, this could be a personal goal, or if you work at work, if you work with a team. When was the last time you made a goal and then had to abandon that goal? Or you reached the goal and then found out it wasn't the right goal to begin with, right? So you had to turn around. So think about that in a moment. I want you to kind of get that in your mind. When's the last time you had to abandon a goal? Now, here's the problem with goals. Sometimes goals are great. But the problem is when we're setting explicit goals for our projects, whether they're design projects, whether they're any type of project for our work or for personal at home, we don't see what we're not expecting when we're setting goals. We're not that good at anticipating things that we don't expect. So there have been many studies that have been documented. One that comes to mind is a team of 80 different radiologists were given a task to rapidly look through X-rays, right? And to try to point out where the problems were in the X-ray. And if you know a radiologist or are one in practice, you know that becomes quite a skill to be able to look through an X-ray and identify the different problems. And you can do it really fast, really rapidly, okay? So this study that was conducted, they had 80 different radiologists flip through a sequence of X-rays. And here was the kind of trick. They inserted a photograph of a gorilla where one of the X-rays would go. And do you know, only 15 radiologists noticed the gorilla at the end of the study. 15 out of 80 radiologists. So 65 trained professional radiologists had a goal in mind, had a skill to execute, and they did it, and they didn't even notice a photo of a gorilla while they did it. All right? So we don't see what we don't expect when we have an explicit goal in mind. So this is one of the reasons why we want to shift a mindset from defining explicit goals to defining directions of travel. Now that's a slight difference, isn't it? When you're defining a direction of travel, you are open to things like managing what's going on around you. You can notice the big ugly picture of the gorilla in the middle of your project, right? When you have a direction and not an explicit goal. It helps you deal with uncertainty. When new things come up, when something breaks, when there's a new requirement for your design project. Because you are able to pivot and slightly change direction or maneuver around the obstacle or even integrate the obstacle into your process. You're dealing with uncertainty. And then discovery. It's the spirit behind what Tolkien was talking about, right? The tale grew in the telling. Sometimes you might want to discover a 400-pound gorilla, right? Maybe the gorilla is friendly. Maybe the gorilla is going to help you in your design project. So you're open to discovery. This is called emergence, okay? These phenomena can occur and happen, and so it's like serendipity. We often don't know until we start along that path. So shifting your mindset from defining goals and trying to stomp towards those goals no matter the cost, and instead, what's the direction of travel on the path? So I want to talk very quickly about a concept from Japanese philosophy called Ba. So Ba means a particular context which has some type of meaning, or in which meaning can blossom. Okay? And we're going to connect this back to the idea of future scenarios in just a minute. Okay? So stay with me here. Now, Ba can be a physical place. It can be a digital place that represents a physical place. Virtual reality can be a digital place where a group of people come together to work on a common problem. When we jump into Mural in a minute in your web browser, and we're all going to be working in there together, we are inhabiting the concept of Ba. Okay? And the concept of Ba is in stories. Yes, the story about a young hobbit who ends up saving Middle-earth. And this is where the critical part comes in. Okay, with stories. Because with stories, we have a dialogue. We can engage in stories the way that our bodies and minds are meant to engage with stories. Okay? And so we can create meaning and value and new ideas with the power of stories. And just to show you an example of that, the film Minority Report, okay, came out, 20 years ago now, right? Collaboration between Steven Spielberg, Tom Cruise, and others. And they crafted a world. They built a world and a mythology, not unlike Tolkien, where new ideas ended up becoming reality. Look at this advertisement for Gap on a screen, right? These weren't around then. Because they used world building, they were able to create these scenarios and these dialogues about what would happen in a world where this technology was possible. And here we are, where the technology is now possible, and the people, the designers, the technologists, the companies who took advantage of those things back then are now reaping the benefits, right? Because they were able to see the stories way back then. And so as technology is getting more and more powerful, as our tools and software and algorithms are getting better and better and better, we need new worlds and new stories, okay, to be able to exist in. And that even comes into things like music and art, even the interesting life stories that you have come into, you bring that experience and it comes into the work that you do now. And that's what's so exciting about product design and about design in general and working in technology, is because we need all of those different stories. We need your story to be added to the current story of what's happening in design and technology to create something completely new. And so rather than these small boxes that we used to have to kind of be constrained by as designers, we can now have a more immersive and a more expansive space in which to play. Okay? So there are components of product design, future scenarios being one of them, that really are more like what children do when they create fantastic stories, whether of Middle Earth or whether a music video with a big blank slate where people dance around and kind of create this relationship with each other through their dancing. So it's reflected in our art, in our music, in our technology, right? It's all stories that we're a part of. And you're starting to see more and more startups and exciting things happening, and it's going to keep growing. And so now is such a good time to get into design and technology. All right, the barrier has never been lower, but it's never been more important that we take ownership over the story so that we have a direction of travel, right? We can't predict the future. We don't know exactly where we're going to go, but we know a direction of travel that we want to go together. So scenario development, what is it? Why are we talking about this? Well, essentially, it's looking for patterns all around you, finding themes and trends, and then turning that into strategic stories that are useful for designers. Now, the good news is, guess what? You're already really good at this. Okay? You thought I was going to come and train you how to do this. You already know how to sense patterns just by nature of being human. Okay? Because humans are pattern-making machines. We love it. We get these like big dopamine hits every time we see a pattern and we try to say, oh, this pattern means this thing, right? We love patterns. We love trends. We love stories. So you're already by default good at this. You just need to harness it, and you need to use a set of methods and processes that can help you turn it into something strategic and useful to create new products with. So where do the patterns come from? Well, they come from external and they come from internal. So I want to talk about 3 different ways that you can get good right now, or you may already be using these at sensing patterns. And this is called signal scanning. So things that are available to you right now, whether you're working in technology, whatever domain you're working in right now, whether you're interested in design or whether you are a very senior or lead designer, or whether you consider yourself to be a founder, innovator, coming up with new ideas and new products and validating them out in the market. So whatever you're interested in, whatever you're working in, there's a plethora of information on social media and RSS feeds. Many different products you can use to collect and cultivate and curate RSS feeds. Reader is the one that I like to use. There's also Feedly. I'm sure several of you have many more. And then social media. So on Twitter is slowly getting better at allowing you to kind of curate what you want to view. So you can set up the topics that you want to follow, right? And that's critically important because there's so much information coming so fast, no one can keep up with it all. So you have to have a way to curate it. You have to have these little strategies. Blogs, newsletters, link aggregators. There are all kinds of great emerging newsletters and blogs out there. We're seeing, the resurgence of the blog. We're seeing paid newsletters where people are able to translate their expertise into these niche newsletters. So whatever you are working in or interested in, there is a niche expert somewhere who is blogging either for free or a paid newsletter. And some of these are extremely high quality. Okay, so don't let the idea of using blogs as a way to sense patterns out in the world related to your domain or your project. Don't let that seem like it's not formal or it's not a good method or anything like that. It is. There's a lot of expert technologists and futurists who are doing that. Internally, you signal scan. Let's say you're working at a company. You're going to have reviews. You're going to have customers who are reviewing your product. Your company is probably conducting user interviews and collecting all of that information. They're doing observational research, usability studies, surveys, market research. There's all of these different pieces to the puzzle. And the people who are observant and smart are able to collect that information together and start digging into and finding, where are the patterns here? What does this all mean? So what do we do with all this? We got this mess of information. It's all tangled together. We're going on the journey. How do we get something useful out of it? Okay. There are many different processes in design called synthesis methods. And if you're in design, you know what I'm talking about, whether it be affinity mapping, prioritization methods, KJ mapping, all kind of different methods for making sense. There's no shortage of synthesis methods, which just basically means, how do I interpret all of these patterns, right? And if you are interested in that knowledge creation and making meaning out of all these disparate data points, there's definitely an art and science to it. And so I encourage you to sign up for, a try experience through Flatiron or a different boot camp or whatever. Just get interested in it, and it can absolutely do some amazing things for your projects, whether personal projects or at work. Okay, so why are future scenarios good? Well, I'm going to give you some practical reasons, 2 practical reasons, then I'm going to give you a true reason. Not to say that the practical ones aren't true, all right, but you'll see what I mean. So the practical outcome of these future scenarios is that it provides a platform for us to develop and generate new ideas, new prototypes, new artifacts that we can use to test our ideas. Okay, so it's like this huge pool of interesting information and data. But when you transform it into a story, all of a sudden, things start clicking into place and you have those aha moments along the journey, right? Because you're defining, where could we potentially go in the future? Where might we possibly maneuver, right? And you sort of, like a miner, you grab those nuggets from the stories and you say, okay, let's pretend this story is true. How might our company or how might our product work if this future came to pass? And then you're ahead of the competition, okay? For those of you who are strategists and innovators, that future scenarios are one of the best tools you can use for making sense out of where things are going in the next 3-10 years. Now, the true reason why future scenarios are great is because actually the line between your lived experience day to day And what happens when you read a story is very thin. So neurologists conducted a study, and this is super fascinating. They conducted a study that showed that the same regions of your brain light up when you actually do the activity and when you read about the same activity. The same pieces of your brain are lighting up. I think the study was about eating breakfast or something, right? As the person ate the breakfast, they measured where the areas of the brain lit up, and then they actually had the participants read a story about eating the same breakfast, and they could hardly notice any difference. So why is that important? Well, it's because stories grab our attention like nothing else does. If I dropped into a story and started telling you about the time I went to London and got mugged and what happened after that, you're going to snap to attention. And you're already wondering what happened when I got mugged in London. I'm not going to tell you. That's a story for part 2. All right. So I'm going to pause for a moment here, and there's only one question that I see in the Q&A. And so Martin says, you've been working in video and filmmaking for the past 20 years. If you want to start a new career in design, how does your previous experience inform the new path? Even beyond storytelling, technical, job prospect for older people. Yeah, I mean, having taught hundreds of students at boot camps, let me tell you that some of the best product designers that I have seen come through have been people that have the experience working on other teams. This is why I said at the very beginning, your experiences, what you have done so far in life, absolutely are valuable in product design. Okay? Because more and more, soft skills like communication, the ability to work with teams, the ability to present your ideas, the ability to make future scenarios are the differentiator between people who just kind of like make stuff look good and the people who actually create real change out in the world. Okay? So if you have that experience, and again, not saying that if you're young that you're not a good storyteller or you don't work with teams well or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying the people who have been older coming through these programs, they have a wealth of experiences to draw from. And those just come into play when you're doing design. Okay. Yes, absolutely. We'll share the transcription with the recordings. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to check my time. Okay, we don't have too much time, but that's okay. We got time to do it. So in the Zoom chat, I'm going to post a link to a program called Mural. And we're going to get in there together and we're going to create Ba, okay? We're going to create a context within which new meaning can happen. So let me get that posted here in the chat. Okay, there you go. I want to make sure that people can get in. Yeah, I'm seeing some cursors buzzing around, so we've got some people in there. And while everyone's getting in, I'm going to answer another question here. So what would the future of product designer be, especially with virtual reality, augmented reality? Will you learn the principle of 3D object designing as well? Well, if you're asking specifically about Flatiron's design program, we don't do 3D object modeling. That's a little beyond the scope of what we teach, but you do learn all of the 2D principles that you would need that translate onto 3D, product design and things like virtual reality. So we don't get into programs like Maya and software that does 3D 3D modeling. What we do, however, is we teach you how to define the experiences within those spaces, within the virtual reality space or augmented reality space. We teach you how to create the interfaces and controls that you would need in those environments. Okay, so especially when it comes to the research portion, one of our projects is you're researching how to create an interface for an autonomous garden system. All right, so again, it's about the experience and it's about the value of what you're creating, right? And if you nail those, right, then you've got something worth putting out in the world. All right. So let's see here. Okay, so here's what I want to do. We don't have breakout rooms like I thought we would, so no big deal. What we're going to do is we're trying to create some of that sensing signal that I talked about earlier within 3 different domains. Now, if this were a team project, right, each of the trend inventories would be about whatever domain your company was in. So we have 3 different portions here. We have one on artificial intelligence, we have one on healthcare, and then we have one trend inventory on climate change, okay? And what I want you to do is if you double click, you'll be able to drop a sticky note into the trend inventory. And then you can type into that sticky note, okay? So you can choose either artificial intelligence, healthcare, or climate change, okay? And what I want you to do is start dropping in trends that you think about or that you know about. Some of you may have experience in some of these sectors, which would be awesome. Some of you just maybe are interested. Maybe you read a blog about it. It doesn't matter. Okay, what we're doing is kind of collective intelligence gathering here. Okay, so it's okay if you're sort of guessing. I've accounted for that because what you can see is that we have a low certainty portion of the trend inventory and a high confidence. Okay, so if you're very confident that this thing is going to be a trend in the next 3 years, you would drop it down at the bottom left corner of the trend inventory. You have high confidence, it's going to be in about the 3 years, okay? So I want everyone to start dropping those sticky notes in there. Again, you can do artificial intelligence, healthcare, climate change. Okay, and I'm going to give you about 5-6 minutes to just go for quantity, okay? As many as you can think of. We're not trying to be super, super accurate or specific. Just go for quantity. Yes, Erica, just like Miro. Yeah, William raises a really good question here about the fact that the old model, and when I say old, I mean, 5 to 10 years ago, used to be you designed a new product and it didn't change too much, right? But now we've had this continuous improvement. Every app gets updated every couple of weeks, if not every couple of days for the bigger ones, right? Why is that happening? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons why. One, I think Moore's law comes into effect, which simply says, and I'm gonna mangle the exact definition of Moore's law, but it essentially says that there's an exponential curve to the speed, processing power, and size of the chips that go into things like iPhones and Android and those things, right? Somebody maybe can post in the chat a better version of Moore's law. Because that exponential rate, we're starting to hit that tip of the curve, right? You're seeing wild things with artificial intelligence, machine learning. The only reason we can do that is because of computing power. Massive millions and millions of individual pieces of data, right? These computers can crunch through them much, much faster. So that's why you're seeing all this emphasis on AI and artificial intelligence. Same thing with augmented reality and virtual reality. Now we have smaller processing power. Virtual reality has been around for a very long time, since the 70s, in fact. If you're interested in VR, check out Jaron Lanier, I think is his name. He's one of the sort of fathers of virtual reality and is probably more knowledgeable than anyone else about it. He's been with Microsoft for the last 5 years or so, working on is it the HoloLens? Well, back in the day, he talks about how VR glasses had to be connected to these massive computers. And so you see these photos of VR in the 80s and 90s where there's just big tubes that are going to their head, right? Well, we don't have to do that anymore, right? Now we're seeing launches of new, and it's not only software, right? Because think about the Apple iPhone events. If we don't see a new iPhone model every year, by God, we're going to revolt, right? So you're seeing this quickening, right? Where everything is a platform now and everything is this rapid continuous improvement. Well, there's problems with that. And I think William has pointed out a good problem, right? Where users are churning through, they can jump from one platform to the other because all of a sudden a brand new thing comes out and now their thing is obsolete, right? Or they have to relearn the software when the whole interface is redesigned for version 2.0. Okay, that's a problem. What's another problem with this? Well, think of the waste when you're talking about the products. Now we have to spend $1,000 on a new iPhone every year. How many iPhones that are perfectly functional are now going into the ocean, right? So it's creating a lot of waste. Somebody damn sure better put that on the climate change part of the board, okay? These are all problems that we need product designers to think about. And we need these methods like future scenarios to help foreshadow what could happen. Well, some of this stuff is happening right now, isn't it? Right? So we need solutions now and quickly, but we've also got to think about the next 3, 7, 10, 20, 100 years. Huge opportunity to jump into this space. Okay, I'm just taking a look here. We're close to out of time, and that's okay because I got done what I wanted to get done tonight. You can look over and you can see the futures cone. And what the futures cone does is it helps us think about what we want to happen, what we think might happen, what's possible given what we know that might happen, right? And what's most likely to happen. So that's called the futures cone. It's just circles right now, but normally you see it presented turned this way. So it's more like this. It's an actual cone. 3D modeling would come in handy here, by the way. Right? But for now, we've just got a flat 2D circle. Okay. But we've got concentric rings that we can sort of define these things. Okay. So the way that connects to the trends map, right, is we start thinking, okay, given that we're highly confident that robots are going to take over the world in the next 3 years, for instance. If we're highly confident that that's going to happen, then we would map that onto the plausible scenario part of the cone, okay? And then what I'll show you, if you'll sign up for the next webinar, what I'll show you is how do we turn that into stories, not unlike Minority Report, that we can then sort of dive down into those stories and say, given that this could happen, what would our company, what would our product do in that situation? And you can design all these interesting artifacts and prototypes to kind of be thinking about those things. And again, it's not about saying, well, this is definitely going to happen, so we have to be ready for it. It's saying, if we mine those stories and if we dive into those stories, what might we learn that will help us right now? Right? It's the journey. Okay? The tale isn't told until you start on the journey. So you've got to start telling that tale through these future scenarios, and you never know what you might grab from one of those scenarios. Aha, this could actually help us right now with a problem we're facing. So it's not all about the future, right? But it's about using ideas about the future to solve problems right now. Okay. I apologize for running out of time. I hope this was helpful. Again, we're going to do a follow-up webinar where we dive into actually constructing these stories, because what you all are giving us here, and great job, by the way, at these trend inventories. I'm seeing some really, really good stuff. And I'm going to show you how to make sense of all of this and then turn it into stories. Okay? It might not end up being Lord of the Rings, but it'll be interesting anyway. Okay? All right.
Fantastic.
Don't see any more questions, so I want to end on time and respect all of your time for being here. It's right now at 7, so again, please follow up with me or with Jelani. I assume Jelani will send out a follow-up email to everyone, and they can get more information about what's going on at Flatiron and how they could get involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll also share the recording as well, so you guys can hop back in. How do you sign up for the next workshop? We'll create the date. Since this was an impromptu decision, we can create the date, and once it's out, I'll send it out to everyone so you guys can sign up for the follow-up workshop. Cool. All right. Thank you guys, everyone. Thank you, Joshua, for an excellent workshop as well. And everyone have a great evening, afternoon, or night, depending on where you're calling in from. See ya.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.